No. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am opening the meeting for August the 5th, 2020 of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Pursuant, I must read this disclosure. Pursuant to the Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A S18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, as well as Mayor Curtatoni's declaration of emergency dated March 15th, 2020. This meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals will be conducted via remote participation. We will have an audio recording available upon request as soon as possible after the meeting. Thank you very much. Today's agenda is very brief, but very full and very important. The first matter of action we're going to take is the approval of the minutes from the July 15th. Madam Clerk, could you take care of that, please? Oh, yeah. Thank you. Hello.
In the matter, can you hear me?
Yes.
In the matter of July 15th, 2020 minutes, I make a motion that we approve them as submitted.
May I have a second? Seconded by Elaine Severino. All in favor of approval of the minutes as presented for July 15, 2020? Please say aye, and I will go around and say nay.
Aye.
Elaine Severino.
Aye.
Josh Safdie.
Aye.
Danielle Evans.
Aye.
And Susan Toronto, aye. Let the record show was 100% approval for the July 15th minutes. Our second item on the agenda tonight is the case of 34 North Street, aka Clarendon Hill, and that's case 40B 2020-001. So I guess, Charlotte, you're on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can everyone see a screen that says City of Somerville at the top, Clarendon Hill next steps, planning staff presentation to ZBA August 5th, 2020?
No.
No, okay. Give me 1 second to get this working and then we can get started. Okay, this works well enough. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so tonight,
What is that, Charlotte?
Yeah.
Pardon me. What is that noise?
I believe that is static from Josh's background noise. So if you all want to.
Hold on, let me turn it off and see.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, Josh.
Okay. So I will be presenting on kind of some remaining questions. I have some questions that I want feedback from the board on as we work towards getting towards a decision on this case.
Thank you.
The applicant team is here, and I will unmute Corey Mann so that she can, if you have any questions for her, feel free to ask them. I'm more than willing to be interrupted to ask for clarification, but I will be presenting on kind of next steps of, so this is the agenda. I'm going to give an overview of kind of what I'm going to talk about and what is new since the last meeting. I'm going to talk a little bit about the waivers list. I'm going to ask for feedback on the draft findings that were included in the staff report submitted for tonight. I'm going to broadly talk about the purpose of conditions and some conditions that we are potentially going to, or that we kind of different types of conditions that we're planning on including. Then I'm going to talk about what we need to do before we get to the decision. And then last, I'm going to talk about post-decision changes. So since the last meeting, we have received an updated waivers list that was presented on at the last meeting that removes the lead platinum, the request for a waiver from lead platinum, and removes the request for a waiver from playground size. The new waivers list also adds one waiver. It is a request to not comply with the 85% park permeability requirement. The applicant is instead proposing 55 to 60% permeability in that central park. There are also some other modifications to the waivers list that are fairly minor. For example, the right-of-way lines have changed since the waivers list was originally submitted. And so since the right-of-way lines have changed, the setbacks from buildings to that right-of-way line has also changed. And so those numbers have been updated. There's also been some updates to the number of bicycle parking spaces, but we'll discuss that slightly more later. So we have also received 2 additional documents that were not included in the packet and that I'm not going to show tonight, but I just wanted to let you know since they are both relevant to some other things that I'm going to talk about tonight. We've received a document that modifies where the transformer locations are going to be, and a document that provides more information about the central civic space, accessible routes on it, and the permeability of it. So with that, I'm going to start discussing the waivers. I have 6 waivers in particular that I just want to call the board's attention to and see if you have any comments that you want to make, since those waivers in particular have been mentioned in one or more staff memos that have been submitted, but have not been explicitly discussed at a ZBA meeting so far. So kind of broadly talking about the waivers list, prior to a decision to approve, deny, approve with conditions this project, well, less so if it's a denial, but if it's an approval or an approval with conditions, the waivers list will be incorporated into the decision as an exhibit. And so we need to make sure that the waivers list fully and correctly reflects what the ZBA is intending to approve. If after the ZBA approves the project, the applicant needs additional waivers, they're able to come back and request those waivers. So for example, if they need modifications to waivers. So if the setback is proposed to be 5 feet and instead the setback needs to be 3 feet, the applicant has a method of notifying the ZBA, and the ZBA can review that change. So I'm going to talk about these 3 waivers first. And if I have some plans and the staff report or the staff memos available, if we want to look at them, just let me know. But these 3 particular waivers, the first one is waiver number 21. It is the waiver request from compliance with ground-mounted transformers, the screening requirements for them. So this waiver was discussed in both the Public Space and Urban Forestry Division's June 12th and July 30th memos. Staff and the applicant are continuing to discuss this topic, but I just wanted to see if the ZBA has any strong or not so strong feelings about whether transformers are screened in compliance with section 10.8. The transformer that is of particular note is the transformer in the central civic space. It's actually on thoroughfare 3, but it is very much in the center of the project. If the board has any comments on that one, are you fine with it not being screened? Do you want it to be screened? Somewhere in between? If you don't have any comments, that is also fine, but I wanted to make sure that that you'd had a chance to review and comment on this specifically.
Well, I have a comment. This is Susan. Why can't it be screened? I mean, you're saying it's in the central civic area. Is that what you said?
That is what I said, Madam Chair.
Okay, and how big of a transformer is this?
Madam Chair, I have unmuted Corey Mann, who, Corey, if there's anyone else that I should unmute who might better be able to answer this question. Yes, I will unmute Andrew Arbaugh as well. Andrew, you are unmuted if you would like to address this.
Sure. So we presented in our last presentation the placement of the transformer, which is currently located in one corner, so I don't have the plan in front of me, one corner near a crosswalk. As we presented last time in the last meeting, it was presented that the addition of screening at that location would actually prevent some of the pedestrian movement through there and actually be more of a hindrance than the actual transformer itself. That's the reason why we're not proposing screening in this location at this time.
And Andrew, this is Susan. Tell me, do you know the size of the transformer, how big of an item this is?
I believe that it is a smaller transformer than sort of a traditional one, some of the other ones that we would be seeing throughout the site, because this transformer is specific only to the park space itself. So it's really just intended to essentially serve the park space, which has a lower load, than the rest of the community.
So give me a dimension. I used to work with this stuff. Is it 4 feet, 3 feet, 5 feet?
I believe I might have to defer to our civil engineer for that. I know we can get you that information though.
Andrew, if I may, this is Charlotte speaking.
Here we go. 2 by 2 by 3, it looks like.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
So the screening
Can I ask-
mechanism that we
you guys feel that by screening it, because that's for aesthetics, correct?
It would be for aesthetic, and we have looked and we are continuing to work with PSUB staff to look at alternate locations where we can use some of the landscape elements to mask it a little bit differently. But essentially putting sort of a giant fence around it, we feel in that central space, which is going to be visible from all sides, probably ultimately calls more attention to the transformer than the transformer itself.
Now tell me, we had a thing here from Luisa Oliveria. She's our director. You all know who she is. And she's saying to deny because of number 21. Did I read that right?
I believe we received that memo as well. We had the opportunity to reach out to the PSUB staff, and we're going to continue, as with the rest of the park, to continue to develop this plan in concert with them and in concert with that staff. So those conversations have already begun, and again, it's something that we're going to be working with them to come up with the final location.
My other comment is, and maybe our architects can jump on board here. I just want to get a visual. I know when you walk around, you see the transformers. Lots of times on private property or in parks and stuff, they have, you're saying fencing. I was thinking more like green, bushes or, something that enhances it and still be able to be accessible for whomever has to get in there. I understand the accessibility, but I wasn't thinking of fencing. I was thinking of some sort of shrubbery or something. Is that something that happens, or am I off kilter here?
For this particular transformer, we are required to have a 10-foot clear zone in front of it. So that does limit our ability in terms of where we can place it. So we do need it essentially to be, within access to the curb area itself. And
what about the back side of it?
It has smaller offsets on the sides, 4 foot on the back and the sides that we would need to provide as well. So if we were to screen, we would be going from something that's essentially 2 by 3 by 3 to adding 4 feet on each side and 10 feet.
Yeah,
which becomes,
I understand. And who spoke to Mrs. Oliveria last on this?
So I reached out to Mr. Lowe, who is the project manager, working with Ms. Oliveira at the PSUP staff yesterday, and we had a conversation about that, and I'll defer to him. But we're excited to work with PSUP to come up with a scheme that I think everyone's going to be happy with.
Is he here tonight? Is he on board, Mr. Lowe?
This is Charlotte speaking. He is not here tonight. I am representing all of staff.
Well, I just want to say one thing because it's the beginning of the night and I know you're going to think I'm a son of a gun. But, this is down to the nitty gritty. We're trying to expedite these things that we get a memo for that are telling us from a director that to deny it, and there's nobody here to speak to us about it. Maybe it's not a big deal, but if Mrs. Oliveira was still discontent with it, and now Mr. Lowe's taken over because she's not here, he's not here, and Andrew was saying we're reaching out. That doesn't tell me anything for our next meeting. I'm trying to get as much info tonight, these unanswered questions, and not to be here for 2 hours tonight either. I value everybody's time, but these are questions we have to ask. They want it, they're saying they can't do it, the director's saying that to deny it, so then we should just deny it. I hope we can get more first-hand information tonight. Because now it went from Oliveira to Lowe to you.
I understand that, Madam Chair. Charlotte speaking for the record. I am here looking for guidance on whether these issues are important to you or whether you understand and agree with the applicant's waiver request. I personally am here to help the board come to whatever decision you think is best, and can help guide that however, but
Okay.
receiving
All right.
guidance from the board in
All right.
future conversations is
That's
useful.
fine. That's fine, Charlotte.
Madam
Ann,
Chair.
you have your hand up, hon. Ann has a hand up.
Yes, it seems like it may be more nuanced than they don't want to screen where screening is required. If I'm hearing the landscape architect saying there are some dimensional requirements which they may not meet, but they may do something to screen. So I think what's the definition of screening per the ordinance? And then there's a reference to attached plan T100, which I can't find in my packet. I think we just need to understand what the dimensional requirements are and then what they're proposing.
Thank
Because
you,
it sounds
Ann.
like they want to propose
Yeah.
some kind of screening, but it's not down to the letter or to the dimensions of what's
Right.
required.
I'd like to piggyback on what you're saying. I want everybody to understand, this is going to be a beautiful project. We're trying to make this a lovely looking place with green space, places for families, townhouses, apartments. We really mixed it up. It looks really gorgeous. So I don't want us to start, having not pretty things. If you have to have transformers, you have to have them. I get it. And if you can't screen them, like Andrew just said, Susan, we'd have to be spreading out and putting up fences and stuff. Then maybe we don't want to. Maybe it is acceptable on certain sites not to have them screened. But I was just hoping somebody could, I don't understand that, and I don't know if everybody on the board did. So thank you for, telling me I just want you to understand where I'm coming from. Elaine Severino has a hand up.
I have some of the site plans in front of me. I can't find C100 either, but I'm looking at G101. And I was just wondering if we have any sheet that shows us in picture form where it's going to sit and what it's going to look like and what it will be next to.
Madam Chair, if I may, T100 is, I had renamed it when I provided it to the board. If you look at H5, Exhibit H5, site-wide transformer locations dated 2006-2, that shows the last formal submission of transformer locations. Some of these have changed slightly through discussions between PSOF and the applicant, but that plan
What
shows.
page?
Charlotte?
Yes, I can. It is H100, or sorry, it is Exhibit H5. Let me pull it up.
Chair Fontano, this is Corey Meehan from the development team.
Hi, Corey.
Hi, how are you?
Good, hon. Can you help us a
I was
little
hoping-
bit?
I was hoping I could just add a little, give a little input here. It's not our intention to ask the zoning board to go against the wishes of the staff. You know, it is our hope to be able to work with the staff to get them to the place where they make a recommendation that our screening is effective and meets the needs of this site. So I think, and Charlotte, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you wanted to see if the zoning board had any additional thoughts, but we should continue to work with PSUF between now and the next meeting to hopefully withdraw that denial recommendation.
All right, I get it.
That is correct. And Madam Chair, Charlotte speaking, I have pulled up on the screen the
Oh, good.
H5 site-wide transformer locations from early June. Again, as Corey has mentioned, the applicant team is continuing to work with PSOF to hopefully revise some of these, but this transformer shown on the screen is, I think, the one of most concern were it not to be screened in some way, since
Okay.
it is in such a central location.
Where are you, is that your cursor going around? Can you point out where you think it is?
Looks
It's in
like
the
it's on
park area,
hardscape,
right?
right?
Park, yeah. All right. Thank you, Corey. No, like I said, as long as you guys keep working with Mrs. Oliveria and, you know, and you've worked so hard to make this such a lovely place, I just want to reaffirm that, you know, sometimes you'll look at a building that after we approve it and there's the wires are all out front, the, you know, the meters are all out front, it doesn't look good. And you're wondering what somebody was thinking about, why they didn't put a little bush or something in front of it. I understand you have access, so I'm sorry for holding you guys up, but I just wanted to get that straightened out. Ian and Elaine, are you all set? Ian and Elaine?
No, I don't feel good about it. I guess I still don't know. That picture didn't really help me at all. I don't know where it is or how big it is or where
Well,
it's
it's
going
We
to
need
be.
to see what's proposed, yeah. We
It's
just need to see what the proposed,
it's like
I
2
mean,
by
it's
2
not
by 4,
nothing, right? But they're not proposing to do nothing. They say they may not comply, but they're going to
Do
do something
something.
clever or creative to mitigate
Right.
so we need to see what that is.
All right. So that's what we're saying, Elaine. They're gonna still work
Okay,
with Mrs. Oliveria's staff and
okay.
see what they can come up with. I just went, and it's a small one. It is 2 by 2 by 4, I think, that Andrew said. So we'll keep an eyeball on that. We'll ask about that afterwards. All right?
All right.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
there's another transformer that's between the townhome buildings, which is also in a
Yeah.
very prominent location that also is saying it's not proposed to be screened.
All right. Well, we'll follow up with you guys generally and say, how did you make out with the transformers that were in jeopardy? You know what I'm saying?
And it looks like it's right in a pedestrian path, so I'm just not even sure how that works.
All right. This is Danielle speaking.
Yes.
Okay, Danielle, thank you. Yeah, I see the
And
townhomes transformer.
Madam Chair, there is an updated drawing on this that has been submitted to PSUF, I think only shortly before this meeting, but we will have that for next time.
All right, thank you so much.
if we're supposed to vote at the next meeting, can we get a completely updated plan set? Because I don't even know what is accurate at this point and what the record set is going to be.
Madam Chair, or through the chair, this is Charlotte speaking.
Hi, Charlotte.
We are working on getting a fully updated, for example, getting the waivers list updated to be fully accurate to the current plans, having updated mobility management plans, which have changed slightly. And I will work with the applicant to have one packet with everything properly dated to provide to the board.
All right. And I mean, if we're not ready for the next meeting, we're not ready. You know what I'm saying? You don't have the stuff that we need or whatever they're looking at. We get it. I know you're busy and I know there's going to be a lot of conditions you're all working on. So we do the best we can do what we have. All right? Thank
And
you,
hard-
Danielle.
Hard
Elaine,
copies, if it's
no.
going to be all new plan set, I like hard copies.
Okay, Elaine, you got that, Charlotte?
That is understood.
Okay. So that was waiver 21. We're going to jump
So-
down.
The next waiver is 22, and this one, I just wanted to clarify for the record, I believe it has been stated, but the PSOF has expressed concern about the lack of, or the potential lack of curbing protecting the rain garden on lot D1 from the One Earth raised crossing area on on thoroughfare 1. This waiver, the staff's current plan, and Corey, please jump in if this does not align with your understanding, but the applicant has indicated that they're willing to do curbing with gaps, which would allow both free flow of water from the road into the rain garden and would allow the free flow of pedestrians across the One Earth and through the central civic space, while still, it would not comply with this requirement, but it would step towards compliance with this requirement, since this requires that landscaping is raised or has full curbing. It would not be full curbing, it would be curbing with gaps. But I just wanted to call out this waiver because it was mentioned in the June 12th memo and the July 30th memo, and so is a point of concern. But it is a point of concern, but I believe staff and the applicant are working on addressing it without removing the waiver request. So that was more of an FYI, since it has come up twice. The next waiver request is waiver number 35 in the most recent set of waivers. It is a new one since the last meeting. It is new not because the plans have changed, but because this was a requirement that it was, the applicant had not realized that this was a requirement and so had not included it. And so now is including it to provide a complete record and to prevent needing to come back later for this request. So the request is to provide a pervious area in the neighborhood park in that central civic space of closer to 55% rather than the required 85%. The applicant has indicated that the reduced pervious area is required in order to provide an accessible route from kind of the lower left corner where the civic space intersects with thoroughfare 1 and thoroughfare 3 towards where the civic space intersects with the upper lot. Let me pull up a site-wide plan. This is the transformer plan, but if you can see my mouse from this area down here up to here, this is also a waiver request that PSOF does not feel they yet have enough information on to feel comfortable with, and that the staff and the applicant are continuing to work on. I wanted to highlight it because it is a new waiver request from the last meeting. And I think staff's goal is, or staff's hope is, even if this waiver request remains, to come closer into compliance potentially through the use of permeable pavers, which our zoning code does count as permeable area. So those are those waiver requests. I will share updates on waiver number 21 and waiver number 35 at the next meeting if I have them, since those are obviously still being discussed. The next.
I have a question on 35, that's okay.
Ann Brockelman,
How does that impact the green score? Can you look at that and let us know, Charlotte?
If I may just,
And
Charlotte, could I jump in for a second?
Yes, please, Corey.
This is Corey again from the development team. I think it's important just to point out that the plan has not changed. This is the same plan that you saw before, and it's the same green score. It's that the code requires that a neighborhood park or a pocket park, I can't remember what our definitional framework is 85% pervious. And when we went back to look, we did not meet that requirement. And so what we are meeting is approximately 55%. We have indicated to PSUP we're happy to work to increase that, but it will be at the margins. I doubt we'd be able to get to 75%, for example. We may be able to get to 60%. So I just wanted to point that out in response to your question, because I think the green score is unchanged.
okay, so the design didn't change. You didn't add more hardscape. It's just that you went and figured out the percentage and realized where you had landed.
That is
Exactly.
correct.
But there's still room for improvement, you think?
I mean, I think, we're willing to work on it as best we can, but I think, as I mentioned, it will be at the margins.
Okay.
thank you, Ann. Thank you, Corey.
If there are no more questions about these three waivers, Madam Chair, the next set of three waivers are all very much aligned with each other. All three of them are about bicycle parking. We have general bicycle parking requirements, short-term bicycle parking design requirements, and long-term bicycle parking design requirements. This comes from the Mobility's June 19th memo. Mobility would prefer that all bicycle parking spaces comply with the design requirements for both short-term and long-term, whichever one is applicable, because the design requirements have been set out to try to provide bicycle parking spaces that are as many as possible or accessible to as wide a range of users as possible. The applicant has indicated that that it is a balancing act between the number of bicycle parking spaces that the applicant is able to provide and the compliance with the design requirements. One point of note on this is what may happen, or whether future bicycle parking whether future bicycle spaces that are proposed in this project will need to comply with the design requirements, and whether compliance with the design requirement, whether the ZBA would prefer compliance with the design requirements or more bicycle parking spaces.
Anybody have a comment? No? Move on? Okay. Charlotte?
Okay, moving on. So now we move towards findings. As I noted, we drafted findings in the staff report. All of them are highlighted in yellow. And I wanted to get the ZBA's feedback on, do you feel that the findings that were drafted reflect your view of this project? Do you feel that there are things missing? Do you feel that there are further findings that you want to make in addition to the ones that we have suggested? So there are a few types, well, so the first finding that is required to be made for this project, the only finding that is really required to be made, is a finding that this project is consistent with local needs. Staff has recommended 2 separate findings, both of which establish this project's compliance with local needs, or compliance with local need, consistent with local needs. The first one is that the city meets or exceeds 1.5% of the general land area minimum. And so the city does not, or the ZBA does not need to accept a comprehensive permit if they choose not to. This was something brought up at the very first meeting when George Proikis, the executive director of OSPCD, asked the board's permission to send a memo to DHCD establishing this. So that's finding number 1 for consistent with local needs. And then finding number 2, which would also need to be made and is the maybe more relevant one for this project, is in relation to this second point of that the project balances local concerns with the regional need for affordable housing. And so suggested findings for both of that fall under both of those points have been included in the staff report. The second finding, the one that relates to local concerns versus the regional need for affordable housing, if you have any suggestions on what other things to include in that, I would be more than happy to include those and get that feedback. I can pull that up if you would like. So this is finding number 1, that addressing that we meet one of the safe harbor criteria, and this is finding number 2, addressing the second point of local requirements and regulations versus the regional need for affordable housing.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question?
Yes, please, Danielle Evans.
So you submitted that analysis to DHCD. Did they respond to it?
They have responded. Their response was, so we had shared with the applicant prior to submitting that memo to DHCD. We had let them know that we would be submitting it. And the applicant did not disagree with our assertion. And since the applicant does not disagree with our assertion, DHCD has a, I guess, they have a policy that if there is not debate over whether a city complies with the safe harbor, they don't evaluate it. So DHCD has neither confirmed nor denied. Our hope is that the board will make this finding, and if for some reason this project is ever reviewed by DHCD again, this might provide a second opportunity for DHCD to review whether or not the city meets the general land area minimum requirement.
Okay, Danielle?
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of confused why that's a finding we need to make in the case of approving the project, because I always thought that safe harbor was what covered you in the case of denying it.
So safe harbor,
don't really understand it.
if I may, safe harbor covers you in the case of denying it, that the Housing Appeals Committee will not overturn your denial. And it also establishes that if the board imposes a condition that is quote unquote uneconomic as defined by state law, if the city meets one of those safe harbor requirements, that quote unquote uneconomic condition will not be thrown out by the Housing Appeals Committee because the city has reached safe harbor. Any decision that the city makes, whether it's approval, denial, approval with conditions that are uneconomic, any decision that the ZBA makes will be found to be consistent with local needs.
Okay, so this is mostly for our conditions. Okay, in case there's a condition that they don't like.
It provides a hopefully an unlikely or hopefully unnecessary backup.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. Anyone else? Thank you, Charlotte. Go on, please.
Okay, so the next finding is a very easy finding. I'm not even sure that it's necessary, but it is better safe than sorry. You'll need to acknowledge that you have received a letter from DHCD, the project eligibility letter that establishes that this project is able to apply for a 40B in the first place. That letter was included with the original application. It was most recently updated in January of this year, so it was very current. So that is a fairly straightforward finding. And then the next few findings they're listed here, but I'm going to stay on the staff report since that has the actual language that has been suggested for the board in case you have any additions, subtractions, modifications that you'd like to make. Our goal with drafting these conditions was to help assist you in formulating and wordsmithing what will go in the final decision. But this was staff's attempt to speak for the board, and we want to make sure that we have done that to the board's satisfaction. And so want comments on all of these findings. We can go through them one by one, or the board can call out specific findings, finding 1, 2, 3, whatever way you want to, if you have comments to make.
So we'll all look at one, and if anybody has a comment, raise your hand. When you're done, just nod your head or something, so we'll go to number 2. All set with number 1, everybody? Any comments on that? No? Okay. Charlotte, number 2. Anybody have a comment on 2? Because we've done all our homework and read all this stuff. Any comment on 2? No? Charlotte, number 3, please. Anybody have a comment on 3? Seeing none, we'll move on. Charlotte? Number 4. Any comment? Seeing none, except for Ann yawning on us. Number 5. No comment. Number 6, please, Charlotte. Thank you. Could Elaine adjust her camera? I can't see her at all. There you go. Thank you, Elaine. I didn't want to miss you in case you had your hand up.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
there's one additional point on this specific
Number
finding that I want to bring up.
Okay.
It is not listed here, but it is listed in the engineering department's, I believe, June 24th memo, and it's about stormwater management for phase 1.
Okay.
One purpose of the conditions, which I'll address later as well, is to help solidify the phasing of the project and make sure that as each phase moves forward, kind of it is the project is moving forward in lockstep. So one suggested condition that relates to phasing is about stormwater management. The engineering division has recommended and will likely include a condition that prior to phase one being constructed, the applicant will also need to prior to phase one being completed, the applicant will also need to complete enough stormwater management infrastructure to support phase one. That will also be added to this finding, but I wanted to make that known since it is not actually written here.
Okay. Does everybody understand that? Okay. Number 7. Anybody? Move on, Charlotte. Number 8. Okay. Anybody? Charlotte, please, number 9.
And Madam Chair, if I may note, this finding is slightly out of date. It does not reflect the most recently submitted plans for the number of short-term versus long-term bicycle parking spaces. That would be updated prior to decision, but I just wanted to note that.
Okay. Update. Okay, number 8. All righty. All right. Go on, Charlotte.
That is the last finding that staff has suggested. If there are any other findings that the board wishes to make that board feels have not been addressed by these 9 or 10 findings, I am happy to help write those and wordsmith them, but I at least wanted to go over these 9 since
Great.
those are the ones recommended or those are the ones established in the Somerville zoning ordinance for other similar projects.
Can I have a thumbs up from everybody if we're gonna let Charlotte go forward with that? Yes, 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 yes. Thank you. All right, beautiful. All right, Charlotte. That's your
So-
findings.
Perfect. Those are the findings. The board will need to vote on these findings once a decision is ready,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I just wanted to do an initial review to make sure I wasn't missing anything major.
Okay,
So the next kind of section of this meeting is I just briefly wanted to talk about the goals of conditions and the different types, or not the different types, but the different goals that each condition is trying to achieve. So planning staff is working with a number of other departments. We're working with PSOC, we're working with engineering, we're working with mobility, we're working with legal to come up with the list of conditions. If this project was not a 40B, it would essentially be a master plan and 9 site plan approvals. So it is it's going to be a lengthy set of conditions to achieve all of the different goals that conditions are meant to achieve. So I've listed on the bottom of the slide some of the goals of a condition. So I'm going to go over some conditions that are currently proposed. I do not have a list for the board to review because it is still being hammered out, but there are at least some highlights. So for example, one of the goals of the conditions list is to ensure that what is constructed is consistent with what has been presented. So 2 of the conditions that are related to that is there will be a condition that the staircase from the plaza on lot 8 or on building AB going down to Alewife Brook Parkway will have an all-season elevator that is integrated with the architecture of the building. That was something that had been brought up at a previous meeting and is a condition that will be imposed. There will also be a condition or a few to require that the applicant submit to City Council a request that the City Council accept as public ways thoroughfares 1 and 2, since thoroughfares 1 and 2 have been discussed as being public ways rather than private. The kind of next goal of conditions is to make sure that the project is consistent with any city standards that have not been waived. One of the conditions that really gets to this goal is the final design of the thoroughfares. As part of this project, the board is approving a subdivision plan of this site, but thoroughfares 1 and 2, since they will become public ways, or since the goal is that they will become public ways, they will need to comply with all design guidelines, engineering requirements, other requirements that have not been explicitly waived. And so there will be a condition requiring that the applicant work with all of the city departments that have input on the design of roads to make sure that the area within the right of way that the board has approved is consistent with, for example, NACTO design guidelines, which is the National Association of City Transportation Officials, and is the design guidelines that the zoning code really espouses for thoroughfares. The third goal is further clarifying the phasing of the project to help establish, as I mentioned earlier, that as the project moves forward, everything is kind of happening in lockstep. Also, as I mentioned earlier, one of the conditions related to that will be that enough of the stormwater management system to support phase 1 is constructed as part of phase 1. And then the last kind of type of condition is to confirm compliance with requirements that cannot be evaluated right now. So for example, the applicant has submitted documentation showing that they will comply with LEED Platinum, but as a project goes through designing the actual buildings, sometimes the points that they can achieve on LEED Platinum change. And so there will be a condition requiring that prior to the building permit and prior to the certificate of occupancy, the applicant reconfirm that they continue to comply with LEED Platinum. There's also going to be a condition requiring that the applicant confirm that the tree preservation ordinance is being met, and that the number of caliper inches of trees that are removed is equivalent, or sorry, the number of caliper inches of trees that are being planted is equivalent to or exceeds the number of caliper inches of trees that are being removed. So again, I don't have a conditions list ready tonight, but these are kind of the goals of what the conditions list is going for. So we're almost at the end. It's a short meeting, but dense. So I quickly wanted to go over kind of the 3 prerequisites for decisions, all of which we've also gone over tonight. So the first one is the board will need to make findings that document how the decision is consistent with local needs. The board both needs to make the finding that it is consistent with local needs, and then also additional findings to establish more in-depth reasons of not just, yes, at the surface level, we find this to be consistent with local needs, but we find it to be consistent with local needs because X, Y, Z. The second thing is that the ZBA will need to review and approve the list of waivers, since the waiver list will be incorporated as an exhibit in the final decision. And then the third thing is that the ZBA will need to review and approve the list of conditions. We hope to have that ready for the next meeting, but as always, I can never guarantee. I can only say what we hope to have. So that is kind of next steps. I also briefly wanted to go over what happens after the decision is made and if there are any future changes that needed to be made. Sorry, first I wanted to give a sample motion. So our goal is to basically have a decision that the ZBA can read through it, make sure everything is there, and make sure everything aligns with what their understanding of, or your understanding of the project is, and then make a motion to adopt the findings of that staff have suggested, including the conditions and the waivers list. So this is a sample motion. I'll have that again when the board is ready to make a decision. So now, last slide, post-decision changes. So I briefly wanted to go over what the process is so that the board and any members of the public who are interested have a sense of if changes need to be made once the ZBA makes a decision, what does that look like? What's involved? Because it is very similar to a typical 40A project, but it is not the same. So basically, the ZBA has made a decision. It's been issued. It's been filed with the city clerk. Everything's good. The applicant realizes that, oh, we actually need to go from 9 stories to 10 stories or some other modification. The applicant would need to submit that change in writing to the ZBA, and the ZBA would have 20 days to review that change and determine, yes, this change is substantial, or no, this change is insubstantial. If the ZBA determines that the change is insubstantial, the change is permitted with no further review. If the ZBA determines that a change is substantial, a new public hearing is held to discuss the changes. That would allow for public input on those changes as well. So that's kind of the process. If the ZBA determines a change is substantial, they can approve the change with conditions, or deny the change. If the change is insubstantial, it is just permitted without needing an official decision. So 40B provides some guidance on what is considered substantial and what is considered insubstantial. Planning staff are going to work with legal and the applicant to make sure that this is acceptable, but we plan on including in the conditions list some further clarification on what may be considered substantial and what may be considered insubstantial. For example, we plan to include a condition that if the applicant is changing their plans in order to comply with the condition that the ZBA has imposed on the decision, that change would be considered insubstantial. So for example, if the elevations change because they need to include the staircase from Plaza AB to Alewife Brook Parkway, that change would be considered insubstantial because the ZBA has already determined that they want that change. Whereas the ZBA staff plans on including a condition if it's amenable to the ZBA that if the applicant in the future requests a waiver from the LEED Platinum or any of the other green building standards, that would be considered a substantial change, since that has been the subject of a number of public comments and discussion, including a sentence in the condition saying that a change is substantial does not limit the ZBA from approving or denying that change. All it would do is require that prior to making a decision on a change, the ZBA holds a public hearing and allow for public comment. That it is not necessary to include those kind of guidance, but it may provide reassurance to any members of the public who are especially concerned about a topic that they will have another chance to provide comment before the ZBA were to approve, for example, a waiver from LEED Platinum. So that is the end of my presentation. If the ZBA has any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them, but otherwise I recommend that the ZBA take public comment since new information has been submitted since the last meeting that the public may wish to comment on.
Okay, first of all, does anybody have anything they'd like to ask Charlotte right off, or the developer? Elaine, you all set?
All set.
Okay.
Yes.
Did I
Could we
hear
get a
enough,
copy of
Danielle?
that? Could Charlotte send that presentation to us electronically?
I'm more than happy to. right after the meeting.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Danielle, for asking for that. Ian Brockelman, you all set? Okay. Josh, you're good. I'm good. Okay, so let's hear from the public. The only thing I'd say is that if anybody's already spoken, unless they have something new, because I have my list from the last time here. So let's open it up to the public and see what they have to say.
Okay. Members of the public, if you have not been here before and don't know the routine, if you would like to make a public comment, you should use the little raise your hand button, and that will notify staff that you wish to speak, and we can unmute you and give you a chance to speak. Madam Chair, I do not see anyone raising their hand to speak.
Did we scare them away?
Or my presentation bored them to sleep.
I don't think so. It was good. No, because I've got my list here from last time, and I gotta tell you, I think I commented on it last time anyway, of how supportive, and it seems like the applicants really done their homework and reaching out to the people, and let's face it, we really need this, and it'll be nice to have it there. So if there's nobody there, then we'll close that portion for tonight. And what else do you have to say to us? Does anybody have something they want to insert that we didn't cover? If you thought of something special, or you want to ask Corey or any of the team? No? Okay. Charlotte, how are you going to wind this down?
So I have nothing else to present to the board tonight, other than, as I mentioned earlier, there are still some waivers. And as Corey mentioned earlier, there are still some waivers that the applicant and staff are working on, kind of hammering out. Since you have no strong opinion one way or another, we will continue to work on that behind the scenes. And if we have any, or if the applicant has any new information or changes, we will address those at the next meeting.
Yeah, and as soon as you guys, when you're straightening these things out with these waivers and you get some answers to us, especially from, the departments in charge, send us an email or something so we can really stay on top of this stuff as we go for the next couple of weeks.
I will keep you all as updated as I can.
Great. Thank you very much. So if Charlotte's all set with her presentation, and Corey and her gang, and Andrew, you guys all set out there?
We are. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Okay, great. So I'll ask the board, if there's nothing else, then I'll ask for a motion. So we're going to be back here on August
August
the
19th.
19th. Thank you so much.
Wednesday the 19th.
Wednesday, the 19th, same remote, robo, and could we have a motion from the clerk, please?
In the matter of 34 North Street, Clarendon Hill, case 40B 2020-001, I make a motion that we continue this to the August 19th, 2020 meeting.
Second.
Seconded by Elaine Severino. All in favor? Ann Brockelman,
Aye.
Elaine Severino,
Aye.
Josh Safdie,
Aye.
Danielle Evans,
Aye.
and Susan Fontano, aye. The ayes have it unanimous. See you guys on August the 19th. Everybody be well. Good night.
Madam Chair, if
Yes.
I may, we do need a motion to adjourn. Once
I'm
we do
sorry.
that, we are ready to
We lost
go.
our mind. We're so excited, we've only been here a little over an hour. I lost my mind, forgive me. Can we have a motion, please, on
Motion.
adjournment?
Adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded by Elaine Severino, all in favor? Ken
Aye.
Brockelman,
Aye.
Aye.
Elaine,
Aye.
Josh,
Aye.
Nell, and Susan, aye. The ayes have it.
Thank you,
Good
Madam
night
Chair.
again. Thank you, Charlotte.